Good Friday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, across the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. Today's show is going to be En Fuego. En Fuego. That's red hot. For those that don't speak Spanish, guys, absolutely on fire, En Fuego. We're going to talk education and how curriculum is changing, evolving. Perhaps some would call it watering down. I called it yesterday the everyone gets a trophy mentality that's proliferated youth sports and frankly irritates people like me who are competitive, who put hours of work into things to be the best possible. We will welcome in a matter of 25 seconds Mr. Jeff Prillaman, a friend of this show, to the program, a longtime educator and teacher in Albemarle County Schools, to get his thoughts and perspective on the matter. We thank Ting Fiber Internet for being the crazy fast internet of the I Love CVille Network, the good doctor Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine for being a part of the show, and we thank the folks on the bottom of your screen right now for being community stewards of Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Judah Wickower is our director. Senor Wickower, studio camera, and let's welcome one of the brightest people we have had on the network, and Mr. Jeff Prillaman.
Stop it.
Jeff Prillaman, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, doing very well. Thanks for asking me to come on. It's something where it's always been a passion of mine to talk about grading, curriculum, schooling, education. I don't know that there's necessarily a best way to do it, but there's always a better way than what we've been doing. And constantly striving to do something better that meets kids' needs is something that as educators we're all about.
Well said. Amen. Amen. If you have questions or props or praise for Jeff, put it in the comment section. I will read them on air. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, how about an introduction to Jeff Prillaman, the educator?
So I'm a career switcher. My background is I have a master's in civil engineering. Never used it a day in my life other than, solving a few problems here and there. Went into business as a sports enthusiast. Have had a store here in Charlottesville. This month actually is our 30th year in business.
Congratulations.
Which is pretty powerful. But in 1999, the two biggest things in the world were Pokemon and Beanie Babies, and I hated working in a sports store, so I started looking for something else to do. Fell into a teaching career, taught for many, many years at Albemarle High School. Opportunity came along to create a STEM program, so I wrote the curriculum along with a lot of help for the MESA program that's been very popular at Albemarle High School. And then the last 4 or 5 years I've been at the central office level helping, overseeing math, overseeing science, and then working on the specialty center that got tabled with the COVID outbreak. So this year I'm actually taking a leave of absence with the county, so that allows me to come on and not speak the county's line and just give you my opinion as to what things can be done differently or what things can be done better. And we'll see where this conversation goes.
So you already getting props and praise. Eric Lee Hahn. As a longtime student of Mr. Prillaman, I can say that he is one of my most valued teachers who's made a tremendous positive difference in not only my life, but also thousands of other people. Chris Ledford, congratulations Cavalier Cards on 30 years. You can dictate the pace and tempo of the show with your comments in the comment section. More are coming in from former students. Yeah. I'm going to get out of your way now. I called it grading equity. And it seems to be a moniker that's sticking here. And grading equity seems to be, you're the expert, I'm just a guy with a microphone. It seems to be the social justice movement of curriculum.
So let's back up just a second and really boil down to what does equity mean. So
okay.
I remember teaching one young lady who asked me to write a letter of recommendation for her for college. So the first thing I do is go and pull up her grades. She made exactly 1 B her entire high school career, and it was with me her 9th grade year. This is a student who did everything you asked them to do, but that B possibly prevented them from getting into Stanford. You know, I mean, it's a kid that had everything else going for her. And so it's one of these things where you, as a teacher, you start saying, I can't really tell the difference between an 89 and a 91 student, but this one kid who gets an A gets a different level of college opportunities than this kid who got a B. And if you're somebody who's getting 3 or 4 89s over the course of your high school career, and this other kid, because they know how to play the system, is getting a 91, all of a sudden they're going to the UVAs and the William & Marys, and I mean, not to say anything negative about schools, but this other student is going to Christopher Newport or whatever. And so as an educator, you want to make sure your grading is fair and equitable. Used to do a lot of professional development system sessions for the school division, and we would say, which of these is an A student? The student who gets 100, 100, 100, 100, and a 0, or the student who makes an 80, 83, 83, 85, 85. One student is acing everything, but they've got that random 0 on there. The other student is just a middle-of-the-road B student. Now, that's a whole nother conversation, Jerry. What is a B student? When we use that phrase, what do we mean? Every student is capable of being an A student if you excite them, if you engage them, if you find their passion. Then you can make every student, almost every student, an A student. But I would argue that as an educator, I need to learn how to treat 1 bad assignment, 2 bad assignments for a kid that aces everything else that they do. That makes sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to read some of the fixes for supporting
Yeah.
learning from the PowerPoint pitch deck.
Yeah. This was Ken O'Connor, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I've gone to a couple of his sessions.
Okay, tell us about that then.
Well, no, it's we've been talking about grading equity in Albemarle County for a decade. Ken O'Connor started coming in maybe 4 years ago, holding workshops with teachers. So we would have a different cohort of teachers come in for workshop 1, and then a different cohort. And really, we're just asking teachers to think about what it is you're doing. You and I both teach history. You're the easy teacher, I'm the hard teacher. Now all of a sudden your kid's getting an A because you view things differently than I do. Same class, same level. There's some equity that needs to happen there where we're at least grading similarly to each other.
Okay, so let me jump in
Yeah.
here. Isn't grading equity allocated to standardized tests and ACTs? Isn't that the equity of curriculum, a common test that everybody takes, as opposed to what we learn in a classroom?
Right. So what's happening over the last, say, 5 to 7 years is a lot of colleges are relying less and less on the ACT and the SAT as a benchmark or as a measure. It is simply a piece of a puzzle that is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They want to see students and their success over 4 years versus one Saturday in November, you know, their junior year or whatever. So recognizing that. The other piece of that is the SAT and ACT tend to be, on average, simply tests of socioeconomic status. Like you can take kids that get the training, they go take the extra classes, how do I bump my points to 100 points? Now all of a sudden you've got some students are doing better on those tests just because they have access to resources that other students don't. And the difference, I mean, there's going to be thousands of people that I made a 1080 my first time, I made a 1340 my second time. I went and took this class, you know, and learned how to game the system, because at the end of the day, it's a multiple choice test where the right answer is there, in theory. So you can, if you know what to do, how to eliminate answers, if you know how to take those tests, you can do well on them.
I will give you that.
Yeah.
A good example of this, my brother and I did well in the school we went to in the PSATs, and we're taking the standardized tests from the 7th grade on to our senior year. So when it came junior year, we had already gotten 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 4 iterations of the test under our belt. So we walked into the classroom, and it wasn't, you know, as Stuart Scott used to say, rest in power, Stuart Scott, cool as the other side of the pillow. Okay, it was fine. Where we were looking at our friends and they were walking in for their first iteration of the SAT and they were freaking the hell out.
Yeah.
They were nervous as hell, and we all know when you're nervous, that's going to impact performance.
Oh, the test anxiety is a real thing.
It's a real thing.
It is without 100%. I mean, I hate to mention my daughter, but she had it, and it's like, how do we give you the confidence that you can do, all this stuff. Just demonstrate.
Just chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, no.
Okay, I'm going to read some of the don'ts. Ray Cadell, thank you for sharing the show. Mike Craddock, we miss you. Jeff, come see us soon. If you have props and praise or questions, put them in the comment section. I will relay them on air. So this is from Ken O'Connor's pitch deck or PowerPoint presentation on fixes for practices that distort achievement. Air quotes around what I just said. Don't include student behaviors and grades. Include only achievement. Don't reduce marks on work submitted late. Don't give points for extra credit. Don't punish academic dishonesty with reduced grades. Basically, I read that as cheating does not mean your grade is lowered or you don't get a 0 for cheating. Don't consider attendance and grade determination. Don't consider attendance. Think about what he's saying here. Don't include group scores and grades. Don't use group peers. Basically, I'm going to paraphrase here, compare a student's performance to other students to determine what a grade is all about.
So you'll have, and there's a law school somewhere nearby that when the papers come in, I'm going to take 10% and put them in the A pile, 20% in the B pile, a bunch in the C, and then a few Ds and a few Fs. And you could have rocked it, and you got a D because everybody else also crushed it, And so that's one that I think I definitely agree. But what's the standard? How did you compare it to the standard? Not how did everybody else compare?
How about the cheating one?
So that's interesting because Ken's whole premise is we should be measuring academic achievement against the standards and nothing else. You probably went to school and you get 2 bathroom passes, and then all of a sudden, if your bathroom passes are worth 2 extra points on your final grade if you turn them in, it's like all of a sudden we're rewarding somebody with a stronger bladder than somebody else. Things like group grades, that's another one that's sort of a little bit of a hang up for me because we can get there. But most of these things are about judging a student based on what they know, not on what they might have done, whether it's behavior, whether it's attendance. I think I missed 63 days of school one year. Okay, I still had really good grades, and it's because nothing was going on. If a student is bored to death, okay, that's fine. Cheating is one where you can say you give a student a 0 on that, but then you allow them a chance to demonstrate what they do know versus just automatically giving them a 0. Then you get into what the heck counts as cheating. So we're both taking a test, Jerry, and I just glance over at your paper to see where you are, and so am I timing myself correctly? Is that cheating?
I mean, aren't you supposed to keep your eyes on your own paper?
Okay, but all I'm doing is, you're on page 3, I'm on page 3, so I feel good about where I'm at.
Okay, let me ask you this.
But you know what I'm saying.
Houston Astros hitting garbage cans to tip off their hitters in the dugout on pitches in the World Series. Is that cheating, or is that just glancing over?
I was so happy to see them lose.
I mean, is that cheating?
It's, in my mind, using that method, stealing signs from second base is different than what they were doing, yes.
I mean, they were using video production to steal signs.
Oh, yeah.
So if we get into the point of splitting hairs on what cheating is, that's a Pandora's box that we're opening.
Without a doubt. And so that's what Ken is simply saying. It's like what constitutes cheating? What is cheating? And then we want the student to demonstrate what they knew. Maybe they knew 65% of what was on that test. Is a 0 a fair measure of what they know compared to the standards? Now, you can't cheat. Here's the other piece of that, and in the MESA program, I don't want to say I encourage cheating, but almost every assignment I gave, I allowed students to use every resource available to them because they were problems. It was exercising critical thinking, it was building, it was designing, it was doing things. So sitting down, taking a time test for 90 minutes, with no resources is not in any way, shape, or form real world.
That's fair.
So it's like, I don't know.
Is using every resource at your disposal, being able to look at Kelly's paper in the desk next to yours?
What's that? Well, and so if I put you and Kelly and 2 other people together and I give you problems to solve that demonstrate your mastery of a content, and now you can use anything available to you. But yes, as we define it, Kelly I hope Kelly's smarter than me.
Jeff Prillaman.
So my favorite one was, this is maybe my second or third year teaching. I was using a test master out of a book, test A, B, C, D. I had one young man who called the manufacturer or the publisher and got a copy of the test master and had copies of the test ahead of time and was studying the
So you gave him props for being creative?
How creative is that? And he would have got away with it the whole year, but he got lazy at the end of the year, and he actually brought the test in already worked out versus just studying it ahead of time.
Get out of town. That is lazy.
It's I just that was a good one.
So how'd you handle that?
What's that? He came in at lunch and took another test, and it's the thing is, he was a brilliant kid. Or was he just a really good cheater? I don't know. But his questions in class, his participation in class, he knew and understood. For him, it was more of a game than it was anything, like I'm trying to get over on somebody. There are kids that cheat because they don't know the answer. There are kids that it's something fun to do.
Ray Cadell's watching. I volunteered with the band program at Almore High School for many, many years. While students involved in music tend to skew higher educationally, I'm always impressed by how much non-music studying and homework goes on in that part of the building. Hard work, organization, etc. are types of behavior that play well later in life. I'd like to see hard work recognized. I want to talk about the score 50, now being the lowest score possible for students to get on tests and quizzes and performance. Anywhere you want to go on that topic?
So
that terrifies me, Jeff.
Well, it does. I mean, so first of all, mathematically, a 0 on a 100-point scale is skewed, very skewed. So let's just go to a 20-point scale. 80 to 100 is an A, 0 to 20. I know there's several people out there who will just do a 5-point scale, and a 0 is failure. The problem is, what do we accept as mastery of a content? I would just say there's 10 key things we want to learn. I would say you've got to know 7 of these things to advance to the next level. You've got to know 8 of these things. 50% says we've got to know at least 5 of these things. But the people who say we should just have a 5-point scale, I only need to know 2 of those things, and if it's multiple choice, I just guessed, because I'm going to hit 2 or 3 just guessing B for every answer. And so I worry that we're setting a kid up for failure in the sense that a 50 is a false dichotomy of what I know. I had much rather give a 0, personally, I'd much rather give a 0 and make the kid do something to demonstrate mastery of content. And if that's a 50, if that's a 60, then that's fine. If the 50 is used as simply a placeholder, but if I can come into a class and I make an 80 in the first quarter and make a 70 in the second quarter, and come in the third and fourth quarter and put my head on my desk and don't engage at all and get a 50, I just passed that class for the year.
And a kid's going to know that.
A kid's going to know it. I mean, I've had students that come up to me, I'll just call the one that jumps to mind, Andreas, because that was his name. But he's like, Mr. Prillaman, double check my math. I'm thinking I can take the 50 on these last 4 history outlines and still have a 90. And it's like, okay.
And did you do that?
Yeah. I mean,
and was he right?
Oh, he's smarter than I am, so he's definitely right. I don't even know why he would ask me to do that.
Well, he basically wanted the Pope's blessing.
Right.
And did he get the 90?
He had an 89.8.
So he got the 90?
He got the 90.
And he coasted?
He coasted. Well, and these are things that would take
that terrifies me.
4 to 6 hours. He saved 25 hours to focus on something else by recognizing that a 50 was good enough. Now, that's a kid at that end of the academic spectrum.
Sure.
What does a 50 do for a kid below? So I taught a lot of classes where I had students who struggled in math. I taught math for Albemarle County, and then engineering and some physics and chemistry, some earth science. Is that all? I think that was all.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but it's recognizing that for other kids, a 0 can be a straight up demotivator. Because you reach a point where I've got 3 zeros in the grade book, I've got a 48. There are not enough grades left for me to get my grade up to
But
a
that
C.
person that student made their own bed. and got to that point.
They did, but we've got students, and this is no joke. I've had students that their mom is a prostitute, and all evening they're fighting off 40-year-old guys that are trying to get with them sexually, and they're 15. I've had kids that they're keeping their 4 younger siblings. I've got kids that work till 1 a.m. And you're asking them to go home and study. Algebra.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even care, And so recognizing that a 0 to them is a recipe sometimes for dropping out of school. And so now how can we, and I think this goes back to, I don't remember if we were talking before, it goes back to the professionalism of the teacher in the classroom. If I have a student who comes in and works their butt off every day, I'm going to find a way to get them over the hump, whether it's giving them a 50, but I have to measure them against the standard of what do you need to know for this class, and have you met it.
But if they are given the 50 because they show the effort, but don't necessarily know the material, effort and knowing the material do not go hand in hand. Does that not marginalize the student gets that knows the material and puts in the effort?
Well, so you're exactly right. So the thing is, and this is, we can argue that grades are sort of antiquated.
Like I wanted to be a professional basketball player, and I put in the effort.
Yeah.
The reality is I'm a 5'7.5" guy that's got a 2-inch vertical and can't shoot from downtown and whose handles aren't that great. It's not going to translate to me playing in the NBA for millions of dollars.
You can work on your handles, though.
But you see what I'm getting at.
I do. It's one of these things where understanding. I think grades are something that we can talk about. How valid are they? We go back to where I said, what's the difference between 2 students? The other piece of this is we use grades sometimes to mastery of content, hard work, growth. Let's just say we've got a 10th grade that comes in reading at a 4th or 5th grade level, and they make 2-3 years of growth over the course of the year. They're still not meeting the 10th grade standards. So how do I not disincentivize that student to keep working their butt off, because next year they'll be caught up?
How does the 10th grader reading at the 4th grade level get to 10th grade?
Because we gave them 50s. I don't know. But
that's why I'm asking.
But and I say that flippantly. Is
that called social promotion?
That's social promotion happens. I mean, without a doubt.
And social promotion is the schools do not have the resources to hold kids back, so they push them forward grades.
I don't know if it's that. There's all kinds of other things around socialization. There's students that
you don't want a 10th grader in the 4th grade from a bullying and physicality standpoint.
No, definitely not. But I mean, there's arguments to be made where we lift students up versus hold them back, and I would argue that we lift them up. Once we've identified a kid that's going to struggle, then we do everything we can to make sure that they're academically successful.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a very pointed question.
Okay.
And we have 6 minutes left, and I also would love, if you're willing, to invite you back on the show next week to do a roundtable with other educators. We have Lee Elberson, the CEO of Claiborne Education, a tutoring company. Yep. And I thought having like a CEO of a tutoring company who works with public and private school students alike would be like a very fair, balanced, roundtable guest.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a straightforward question for you. I am working my behind off from a professional standpoint, clocking 50, 60, 70 hours a week, sometimes more, because I have a 3.5-year-old little boy, and there's nothing that has motivated me more in my life than my 3.5-year-old son. You have kids. You understand. A lot of the viewers and listeners have kids. He has turned me into a better husband, man, and someone who wants to grind so he can have stuff that I didn't maybe necessarily have. And I came from a family of resources, okay? So if I know that my little boy is going into a potentially watered down educational system, and I'm busting my ass, excuse the profanity, I'm busting my tail to provide for my family, and that hard work is leading into, financial resources, would I not, say, son, perhaps we should consider the private school route, and then other families, parents of means, likely considering the same, and if that happens, are we then creating the gentrification of education?
So
Even more wealthier families and kids of means end up in private school or homeschool settings, and families that don't have the economic means end up in a public school setting, which furthers the generational divide and the social justice gap.
yeah, so you're making one faulty assumption there in my estimation.
Okay.
In that a grade that's gifted to a student, and we're talking about a small percentage here. We're talking 3, 5, 8% of kids that might get something like that. That doesn't mean that the education they're receiving is any less than. So grades don't even become something until middle school.
But there's
Yeah.
such thing as keeping up with, there's such thing as peer influence and keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
If you're in a competitive environment and the other folks are of educational or intellectual similarities are higher, guys like you and I who are competitive, we're going to rise to the challenge. And if we're surrounded by peers who are potentially not educationally or intellectually higher, we're going to lower to the challenge, drop to the challenge.
Yeah.
You disagree with that?
I actually do.
Okay.
I mean, we talk about different, so even in every class I had a wide range of academic abilities. You find what drives the kid, you find what engages them, what excites them, and then I'm going to get you to demonstrate to me some way that you know the material. I don't think I ever, that can't be true, but you never look for that lowest denominator. You're always looking for middle of the road and up. I set a bar pretty darn high, and I wanted every kid to jump over it, and I would work with them so they got over it. Now, does that happen during COVID where every teacher is stressed out and overworked and you're not seeing kids' faces sometimes? I mean, we've got the virtual school in Albemarle County. So I'm sure there's some students that fall through the cracks, but at the same time, a student's grade, I don't think, starts to become a measure of who they are as a student until late high school. And I don't think any of our educators in Albemarle County are teaching down to the lowest common denominator in K through 5, even through middle school. I mean, one of the great things at Charlottesville is one of the best places to live is because our public school system is a private school education. I mean, we do an incredible job. And then we've got opportunities. You mentioned Mike Craddock earlier. He runs Center One, which is an opportunity for kids to engage in project-based learning all day long for some of their classes, and it's a powerful learning experience for kids.
So this is Jeff. I won't use your last name here. Jeff routinely watches the program. Jeff, I got a lot of respect for you here. He says a follow-up on what you guys are talking about. 86% of Charlottesville school students are considered gifted. 86% of the students at Charlottesville, grades 3 to 11, are considered gifted. Now, that right there seems like an absurdity to me. That could be you want to hit that one?
Well,
86%, Jeff, of 3rd to 11th graders?
It's gifted. There should be 5 to 8% are gifted students. I mean, really, is what we're
talking about. Because that's a real world.
That's a real world. But then you're gifted in music. I'm gifted in you know,
and a lot
athletics.
of things.
And so now all of a sudden, what does it mean to be gifted? You know,
it waters down the moniker of gifted.
And I know Albemarle County is changing their model on the gifted program in the last 2 or 3 years, but it's something where what are you gifted in? And if you love building, you know, rockets or planes or something, you're gifted in that. Now all of a sudden, can I create an educational experience to allow you to use your gifted, identified giftedness to meet some, you know, standard of learning? Could you take a physics class and do nothing but design planes, which is what you're doing in your spare time anyway and every Saturday? And then the short answer is yes, but that takes a tremendous amount of effort, people who really know how to write curriculum, a lot of money to give people the time to do that. The year that I wrote Mesa, I only taught half time. The other half of the time they gave me to write the curriculum. And that was something that was, you know, pretty powerful for students. So making those resources making that money decision is key when you're going to start doing, innovative stuff like that.
You got John Heffernan that's watching from Ireland. He says, hello, Jeff. He says, I'm watching you, Jeff, from Ireland. You have 6 different states on the show right now, and evidently Ireland watching Jeff Prillaman on the program. This man has got swagger right here. We got Ireland on the program here. All right, why don't we, and will you please join us next week?
I can come back.
Okay. This guy, I love this guy. Cool dude here. Explain to me, we'll close on this.
Okay.
Should moms and dads and parents, I see them freaking out when I did this post. I kind of freaked out. Okay, and I understand the influence we have with so many followers with the I Love CVille brand.
Right.
There's a lot of people that follow us. And when we do a post like this, irritates the hell out of me, I think was the copy I included in this post, I realized what was going to happen. Okay, should moms and dads, not moms and dads, should me and my wife be concerned about grading equity? Last question.
That's a big one. So what you should be concerned about as a parent, or as anybody in the community, I want the school to turn out the best students that they can. The responsible students who are polite, students who do their work. Because even if you're not going to college, you're going to become a worker in our community workforce. I want somebody who understands critical thinking. If a grade is punitive, and that makes me drop out to where I don't have a high school education, then that's a problem. If a grade, but here again, we go back to, are you as the teacher, am I accepting a 50? Oh, you didn't do it, let me just give you a 50. I'm gonna make that kid do that. I had students who would turn in work to me, and I'm like, you can do better than this, and give it back to them. I'm not accepting 80 work from students. I wanna see your best effort before I sit down and grade this. So for me, are we accepting that 50 and that's our last fight and that's our last battle? And I would say the answer to that is no. I think the 50 is merely a placeholder to not demotivate kids, but I think it could become problematic if it becomes so much of a policy that students start abusing it.
Jeff Prillaman just hit a grand slam right here. In fact, Jeff Prillaman just hit for the cycle with a grand slam included in the cycle. I just texted Lee Elberson, CEO of Claiborne Education, to see if he could join us on Monday.
Okay.
This is an abbreviated show, unfortunately, because I had a 1:30 on the books. I was not going to go down grading equity today, but then I saw the response from the viewers and listeners, and I'm like, oh my God, we got to cover this on the program. We'll see what Lee says. I will connect with you. I may also see if I can reach out to Emily Theed, who's an author, who's and one-time teacher at Albemarle County. Now she's an author, not in the schools. Emily, I'm going to reach out to you, who's pro-grading equity. So we'll have a head of a tutoring company. We'll have Mr. Prillaman and Mrs. Theed on the program here. If she's willing to confirm and join us, I will put on the network when that show's going to happen, and we'll go extra time for that one, so we can dig into the comments. I want to say this, in closing on this. Jeff, I've always thought this. I think you are a super cool dude. We have a lot of similarities and hobbies and interests that we like. I think you're able to take complicated material and make it approachable and understandable, which means you're a hell of a teacher. We're lucky to have you in the area.
Thank
I
you.
mean that.
Yeah,
I mean that.
Thank you very much.
Jeff Prillaman, I Love CVille Show. 40 minutes felt like 4 minutes today.
It did go quick.
That's because of this guy right here. We will be back in the saddle on Monday with Real Talk and the Monday Market Monitor, the real estate show we do, and 12:30, the I Love CVille Show. Put it on your calendar now. We're going to hope to continue this conversation 12:30 on Monday on the I Love CVille Show. I'm going to wait to hear back from Emily and Lee if we can make that happen. Thank you for joining us. For Jeff, for Judah, I'm Jerry. You guys have a good weekend. Be safe and keep the dollars in the community. Keep your money in the community, guys. Spend the money in the community with people that make the community better. Have a good afternoon. Take care. Dude, Jeff.
Did that go okay?
Yeah, you know that went well. Is it fun?